Welcome back to Giant Freakin' Robot. After decades of successful Marvel Studios movies, it may be difficult to imagine, but it's true. There was a time when signing up for a movie based on a Marvel Comics property was not an instant ticket to stardom. Serving as possibly the best example in this or any other universe is the 1986 bomb,
Howard the Duck.
And yet, while the movie was a massive disaster and likely contributed to delaying the emergence of the Marvel Cinematic Universe for decades, it didn't have to be that way. In fact, with Marvel's recent pivot into R-rated movies and the MCU's comedic focus, Howard the Duck could be just what Marvel needs most right now. So how did it go so horribly wrong in 1986? This is why Howard the Duck failed.
Right now, you're the one and only thing that's making it very hard.
Created by Steve Gerber and Val Myrick, Howard the Duck originally appeared as a side character for Man-Thing in Adventure into Fear 19. He quickly became a favorite of Gerber's, and Howard the Duck got his own book in 1976, featuring overt social satire and crass humor that set it apart from other Marvel comics. Howard the Duck was a popular character throughout the late 70s, with his fictional 1976 presidential run resulting in thousands of write-in votes in the real-world election. Of course, the character's reputation as a cool, countercultural, comic book character was destroyed in 1986 with the release of George Lucas's Howard the Duck.
His name is Howard the Duck, and he's the lead in the new movie produced by Star Wars creator George Lucas.
And he has never recovered. The movie, starring Lea Thompson alongside a puppet voiced by Chip Zien, was a massive flop, earning back just $38 million on its $37 million budget. The movie briefly takes place on Duckworld, a planet that closely resembles Earth, but has 2 moons and is inhabited by anthropomorphic ducks.
Wipe out feather fungus in even the most active crotches.
But it doesn't take long before our titular character gets launched into space and lands in Cleveland, Ohio, where he befriends Beverly Switzler after saving her from being mugged. He uses the martial art of Quack Fu. The Marvel film escalates quickly when Beverly invites Howard back to her place to spend the night, implying that a creepy interspecies romance will come to fruition at some point in the film.
Howard.
After a fight breaks out at one of Beverly's shows, Howard once again saves the day. He is eventually asked to become the band's manager, to which he obliges. This course of events eventually leads to an extremely uncomfortable scene full of sexual tension and actual intimate contact between Howard and Beverly.
I have developed a greater appreciation for the female version of the human anatomy.
Howard, you really are the worst.
It can only be described as casual bestiality.
It's hard to keep Leah off of him.
He's my boyfriend!
That's disgusting.
It's one of the big problems with this Marvel adaptation or any PG-rated movie that tries to shoehorn adult humor into the plot. On one hand, a PG rating allows for a broader audience, which is normally a good thing for overall box office numbers. On the other hand, people took their kids to see this movie because it was about a duck and probably had a lot of explaining to do on the drive home.
He's a real sexy duck.
And yet this PG contains scenes like this, and this.
Mommy, what's that?
Who is this for?
Mommy, what's that?
I can't tell.
What's that?
In other words, Howard the Duck was too childish for adults to appreciate and too adult for children to not be traumatized. Actually, with scenes like this, I assume a few adults were traumatized too.
My God.
While all of the above is happening, there is a B-plot involving Howard and Beverly seeking the help of Phil Blumbert, played by Tim Robbins, to get Howard back to his home planet. Phil is a lab assistant who thinks the laser spectroscope that accidentally brought Howard to Earth could also send him back to Duckworld if they can reverse engineer the device. In doing so, they accidentally bring another life form back to Earth, and he possesses Dr. Walter Jennings before introducing himself as the Dark Overlord of the universe.
I'm not Jennings anymore. The transformation is complete. I am now someone else.
Though the Marvel films of today that we know and love mostly do an excellent job in building out several concurrent storylines, Howard the Duck completely missed the mark and leaves us with an unsatisfying resolution. The expressionless puppet,
That was a real engineering feat to get his lips to curl.
mindless humor, and forgettable plot were all highlighted in its overwhelming negative reviews.
The central character, the duck, the one that we're going to be rooting for, have a rooting interest in, is neither funny nor bitter funny, and it doesn't work at all.
To say this Marvel movie was not well received would be an understatement. Howard the Duck not only barely broke even at the box office, but it was also nominated for a whopping 7 Golden Raspberry Awards. It's one thing for a film to be nominated for a Razzie, let alone 7 Razzies, but Howard the Duck won 4 of them. Worst Picture, Worst Screenplay, Worst New Star, and Worst Visual Effects. The movie was such a disaster that star Lea Thompson now blames it for ruining her career. Speaking on the Celebrity Catch-Up podcast, she revealed,
"Probably destroyed my film career, even though I did some, good films after that, especially Some Kind of Wonderful. But yeah, it was really difficult."
Tim Robbins co-stars in the movie, and it didn't seem to affect his career trajectory. But Howard the Duck should have been a big deal. It was supposed to launch Marvel's movie age. After all, the guy who made Star Wars produced it.
He's our leader.
It should have worked, shouldn't it?
I think it would have been possible for Howard to maybe have worked if only they'd started with a funny, likable duck in a comedy.
Howard the Duck was the first theatrical Marvel release since 1944's Captain America serial. George Lucas was enthusiastic about adapting the Steve Gerber comic book of the same name, praising it for its film noir characteristics as well as its inherent absurdity. If you look at Howard the Duck as a proof of concept, rather than just a horrible Marvel film, it does have a lot going for it. Though the actual duck costume's final iteration on the big screen left a lot to be desired, the special effects throughout the film that were done by Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic are actually quite good, in some instances. But a series of poor decisions, like shooting a live-action film in favor of an animated one due to contractual obligations and a time crunch, doomed the project. After a long hibernation, Howard the Duck has slowly begun to recover as a character in recent years.
Gross.
He's remained a fixture in the comic universe, and is slowly being reintroduced to non-comic readers through the MCU.
You just let it go.
He's made several cameo appearances in movies like Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers Endgame. With Seth Green as the current, consistent voice of the character, he's primed for a comeback.
You know what they say, you're out of luck until you've gone duck.
Multiple ideas have been floated for a Howard the Duck project in the MCU. An animated adult comedy on Hulu was planned with Kevin Smith set to write and produce, but that show was cancelled in 2020 along with several other Hulu shows. Rob Zombie and Lea Thompson have both pitched movies about the character, but those pitches happened before the MCU was making R-rated movies, with Deadpool and Wolverine finding massive success as an R-rated, comedy-focused movie. It may be time for Disney to take another look at Howard the Duck.
Hey, honey! Yo!
Like Deadpool, Howard has a crass sense of humor and a gruff but lovable personality that lends itself to adult comedy.
He's compensating for something big.
While the standard PG-13 MCU brand of comedy isn't well suited to the character, he could help establish Marvel as a home for adult comedy. Unlike the MCU's other comedy characters, Deadpool and She-Hulk, Howard the Duck's comedy is rooted in broad social commentary. He's not a superhero parody, and his jokes tend to be about real-world political and social issues. The MCU has become increasingly self-involved, and a character that actively comments on and mocks our real world would help the franchise feel relevant again. George Lucas's Howard the Duck made the character a punchline for decades, but he still has a lot to offer. As Disney looks for ways to reinvent the MCU, they should ignore the 80s movie and give the alien duck another shot. The franchise needs bold moves to survive, and resurrecting the biggest flop in Marvel history may be just what they need. Think it's a good idea? Let me know in the comments on this video. And if you enjoyed this quacked up trip into the 80s, remember to subscribe. Until next time, this has been Giant Freakin' Robot.